Okay guys, welcome again. In this video, I will discuss about port security concepts and configuration. Why do we need port security? Port security is the process of restricting access to a network by limiting which devices can connect to the network and how they can connect. Only specific devices or MAC addresses can access it. Well, the purpose of port security, the ability of a network engineer to restrict the interface on a switch, so that only the expected devices can use it. Ethernet LANs are very much vulnerable to attack as the switch ports are open to use by default. Without port security, various attacks such as COM table overflow attacks, MAC address spoofing attacks, and DOS attacks at layer 2 will be occurs. For example, an attacker connects a laptop to the wall socket that connects to a switch port. Attacker's task is comparatively very easy when they can enter the network. When you enable port security on this port, laptop, or any other inappropriate device tries to send frames to the switch interfaces. The switch can discard all the frames of that device, preventing the attacker from accessing with the network. This is obviously a powerful feature. If the network engineer knows what devices should be cabled and connected to particular interfaces on a switch, the engineer can use port security to restrict that interface. It is a way of controlling which devices can access the network. As a result, the purpose of port security is to limit the potential for unauthorized access to the network and protect the network from malicious attacks. It also controls the flow of data in and out of the network. How port security works? Port security identifies devices based on the source MAC address of Ethernet frames that devices send. For example, in this diagram, PC1 sends a frame with PC1's MAC address as the source address. Switch 1's fastEthernet 0/1 interface can be configured with port security, and if so, switch 1 would examine PC1's MAC address and decide whether PC1 was allowed to send frames into port fastEthernet 0/1. Port security has several flexible options, but all operate with the same core concepts. First, switches enable port security per port with different settings available per port. Each port has a maximum number of allowed MAC addresses, meaning that for all frames entering that port, only that number of different source MAC addresses can be used before port security thinks a violation has occurred. Port security examines frames received on the interface to determine if a violation has occurred. It defines a maximum number of unique source MAC addresses allowed for all frames coming in the interface. It keeps a list and counter of all unique source MAC addresses on the interface. It monitors newly learned MAC addresses, considering those MAC addresses to cause a violation. Port security takes action to discard frames from the violating MAC addresses, plus other actions depending on the configured violation mode. Also define a maximum of 3 MAC addresses and defining all 3 specific MAC addresses. Also define a maximum of 3 MAC addresses but allow those addresses to be dynamically learned, allowing the first 3 MAC addresses learned. Also define a maximum of 3 MAC addresses, predefining one specific MAC address and allowing 2 more to be dynamically learned. What is a port security violation? When a rogue host tries to connect the switch port on which port security is enabled, port security violation occurs. In simpler words, a host who is not allowed to access that port but still tries to connect the port or sends the frame to that port, then violation occurs. The violation mode defines how port security should react when a violation occurs and defines how a port will behave when violation occurs. There are three violation modes: shutdown mode, restricted mode, and protect mode. With port security, each switch port can be configured to use one of three violation modes that defines the actions to take when a violation occurs. All three options cause the switch to discard the offending frame. However, the modes vary in how many other steps they take. For instance, some modes include the action of the switch generating syslog messages and SNMP trap messages, while some define the action to disable the interface. This table lists the three modes: protect, restrict, and shut down, and their actions. Okay guys, as you see the diagram, in this diagram I will use Packet Tracer Network Simulator software. You can use any network simulator software or can use a real Cisco switch to follow this guide. And I will show you how to configure and enable port security on a Cisco switch. Port security configuration involves several steps. First, port security works on both access port and trunk ports, but it requires you to statically configure the port as a trunk or an access port, rather than let the switch dynamically decide whether to use. Let's do the configuration and learn how to secure a switch port with switch port security feature step by step.